Thanks for joining us on Tandem Radio for a very special segment, By Design, focused on helping you understand how God designed you so that you may be healthy and productive in fulfilling God's purposes in your life for many years to come. Now let's join our host, health expert and public speaker, Dr. James Proodian.
Welcome to the By Design radio program. My name is Dr. James Proodian of Proodian Healthcare and ProodianHealthcare.com, where health literacy is the key to longevity. And as long as God has us on this side of eternity, my show is designed to help educate you and your families to feel better, to function better, and live as many quality disease-free years as possible. Well, hello everyone. I hope everyone had a great week this past week. I wanted to start off by congratulating my daughter Hannah, who just graduated the 8th grade at Calvary Christian School in Old Bridge. Love you, Hannah, and I wanted to start off a big I love you to her, and just how proud I am of her. I also wanted to bring up my daughter Sophia, whose birthday was on June 14th a couple of days ago, and today's show is actually going to be part of Sophia's recent science final. So that's what we're going to be doing today in a second, and I'm going to fill you in what that means. Our Bible verse, Luke 1:37, for with God nothing is impossible, and my show is designed to use that to acknowledge the fact that if we become better educated on having the discipline and the foresight to see our behavior in our choices with our food, our physical lifestyle, and our psychological health, we have a great ability to impact how we feel, how we function, and how long we live. And that is the goal of the show. Using the pyramid of health as the backdrop and the 8 parameters that are set up as foundational parameters on the show, we've covered a lot of them. I think I'm down to 2 at this point. Detoxification, epigenetics, immunity, and inflammation have all been covered, along with digestion and stress. Those are 6 of the 8. So if you want to go to tandemradio.com, please go to the archive shows, and you could catch up in the previous weeks where I've discussed those 6 along with a bunch of other topics. We're down to energy and structural integrity, and we're going to be starting structural integrity today, which brings me to Sophia's science project, and the structural integrity of our cell, which leads to the structural integrity of our bodies. So God gave us this unbelievable design and these 8 parameters in which I built my radio show around, and I pray that each week we're building upon a topic and a subject matter to empower you to make better decisions in your lives as we're out and about. We did a topic last week on meat, and boy, oh boy, I got an earful from a couple of patients. They were comical earfuls about how I continue to take things away from them, and that's not necessarily true. It's all about identifying the processes in which God has enabled our bodies to be designed to perform versus those that man has imposed on our lifestyle, one of which is the complete biochemical change of red meat, which we talked about last show. And in the last 200 years, man has restructured a Frankenstein type of a meat that we buy at the supermarkets that doesn't resemble, it resembles meat physically the way it looks, but biochemically it's a very different structure. So this brings us to structural integrity. And structural integrity it starts with the understanding of the human cell. And the human cell is fascinating. I mean, think about it. My mom and dad got together in 1965 and had some fun. They didn't really think about it too much. But 9 months later, I was born. And what happened during that 9 months is the miracle of life, that 2 cells could join together, could grow a human being, right? And 9 months later, a baby is born, and that baby continues to grow and to develop into trillions and trillions of cells. Each one of these cells are designed to have a very specific function. So if it's a nerve cell called a neuron, or let's say it's a liver cell called a hepatocyte, or a bone cell called an osteoblast. And you could continue that conversation. Every cell in the body has a name. There's white blood cells, and there's red blood cells that perform very specific functions. And all of these differentiated cells begin at conception with 2 cells. Now, If anybody's watching The Wormhole out there, which is on the Science Channel, that's being narrated by Morgan Freeman, where it is an amazing show, but be very careful as we interpret how the Big Bang, or if you get involved in the string theory and physics, how man has created and crafted these theories of where we came from, and that these, stay with me now, these cells that are differentiated to perform very specific tasks in our body are created in a way without much of our thought, but we're sort of left to believe, if you watching The Wormhole or reading about the Big Bang Theory, that all of these cells had a innate intelligence to somehow grow and differentiate themselves over billions and billions of years. I find that rather comical sometimes when I listen to these shows, that there is no God and that God was not involved in that process. And I think that as a Christian, it's really important that we look at the science in hand and the theories in hand and ask ourselves, wow, the expected belief is that we created all of this differentiation by chance, that somehow some innate foreign intelligence figured out how to differentiate cells into all of these variety of cells performing very, very highly intelligent functions, so that when Mommy and Daddy Proodian got together, they didn't have to think too much about the two cells that were coming together to form me or form you. And these trillions and trillions of cells later, what we're left with is God's design for cell anatomy. And cell anatomy, the cell parts and their functions, is what my daughter and I, Sophia, this past week as we were studying for her final, it was really interesting. We're going through these words, and she's in the 6th grade, and I'm going to share some of the 6th grade biology with you. I know that might sound funny, like we're all adults, but something, when you look at basic 3rd through 8th grade science that the kids are learning out there, I think a lot of us need to get back to that and look at the very basic fundamental definitions of our design and what these words mean. For instance, a cell is the smallest unit that is capable of performing like functions. So in other words, our life and our life functions require what is the smallest unit? Well, it's called the cell. So it's the basic unit of living things. So why don't we start there? If we're going to have a conversation about us as living beings, right, as human beings, we have to start with the building blocks. The very basic building block is the human cell. So there was something created, called the cell theory. And the cell theory is that all living things are made up of cells. Cells are the smallest working units of living things, and cells come from pre-existing cells through cell division. So what cell division is, guys, is every one of our cells, all of those differentiated cells, white blood cells, bone cells, spleen cells, liver cells, what have you, they have to divide to create new cells. Now, in order for 2 cells to create 10, 20, 30 trillion cells, that's a whole lot of cellular division happening in our bodies, particularly in a baby, in an embryo, in a baby, in the way a baby develops and then continues to grow. There's this constant state of cellular division. So what are some examples of cells like that you may have heard of? Well, we talk about bacteria, things like nerve cells, red blood cells, okay? Amoeba is the type of a cell. And the cell is then subdivided into a variety of parts. So, for instance, you may have heard of a cell wall. A cell wall is something that is only in plants and in bacteria. We don't have a cell wall. But a cell wall basically protects and supports a plant cell. We have a cell membrane. The cell membrane is the protective layer around the cell. It allows oxygen and food to come in and out of the cell and for waste to leave the cell. And we're just talking about one cell. Remember, you've got trillions of these little buggers. Inside the cell, you've got something called cytoplasm. This is a gel-like material, and it surrounds the cell membrane. I think we've all heard of the nucleus, which is inside the cell. This contains the DNA, and it contains the instructions of everything a cell does. So my liver cell has very, very specific a very specific code and instructions, like software on a computer. And that code and those instructions are designated through the nucleus. The nucleus also contains the DNA, and the DNA makes me, and it makes you. It gives us our characteristics, right? Moving on, we have ribosomes. Ribosomes, in every cell, we contain thousands of these guys, and these make proteins. Think of it like a battery plant, okay? So in other words, inside the ribosome, we're making all of these proteins that give us the cellular energy. Then there's something called the endoplasmic reticulum. It's ER. It moves materials around the cell, kind of like a highway, okay? And this thing, again, allows communication through highways in which stuff can move around cell. Inside the cell, the next is the mitochondria. This releases energy from food. So this is actually, in a plant, this is the plant energy, okay? And it controls the water and other materials in the cell. Many times you hear the mitochondria known as the powerhouse of the cell. It makes the energy. Very, very important for energy production. The next up is chloroplasts. And these are only found in plants. They contain the green chlorophyll, which gives plant their color. This is also where photosynthesis takes place. Okay, it helps plants make food. Next up is the vacuoles. And then finally, we have something called Golgi bodies. And these are proteins, again, packaging the plant. They move materials around. So you think about those 10 things that I just rattled off. I certainly don't need you to jot those down, but you think about those 10 things that are inside one of your cells that you never, Mom and Dad Proodian never had to think about turning one of their cells on. That God designed us that these things just happen by the miracle of life. Okay, and that miracle of life, that every day of our lives, these cells are being born or they're dying, right? Cellular turnover. And the reason I wanted to start off structural integrity with a conversation about these cells, and thank you, Sophia, for doing the science lesson with me this week. And it's a 6th grade science lesson. And please go online and you could look up things about how the cells work. There's some amazing visuals that have been produced by major universities now, using kind of like the visuals that you see in Shrek and in some of these really cool animated movies. And they use it to tell the story of the cell. So it's not dry and boring on a sheet of paper. All right, you want to bring this stuff to life for your kids. Go and check out the resources online, and you could show this amazing God-given miracle of the human cell and the structure of the human cell, and how all of those cells come together to make the human being. That's what makes up the human being. So whether it's a brain cell or a fingernail cell or a big toe cell or a spleen cell, they all are working in one harmonious unison called human biology to create every day our lives, our ability to get up, move around, think, digest and assimilate nutrients, and to live our lives. So that is the backdrop of structural integrity. Now, if we take that structural integrity, now we're going to start connecting dots, because we just came out of a conversation on how man has polluted our meats, and how man over the past maybe 6 months have been going over a topic and then talking, about a foundational subject matter and then talking about a topic. So let me read to you something here, and keep those cells in mind. Something called processed meats declared too dangerous for human consumption. May 16th, 2013. The World Cancer Research Fund has just completed a detailed review of more than 7,000 clinical studies covering the link between diet and cancer. Its conclusion is rocking the health world with startling bluntness. Here it is. Processed meats are too dangerous for human consumption. Consumers should stop buying and eating processed meats. Things like bacon, sausage, hot dog, sandwich meat, packaged ham, pepperoni, salami, virtually all red meat used in frozen, prepared meals. These are usually manufactured with a carcinogenic ingredient known as sodium nitrate. It's used as a color fixer, by meat companies to turn packaged meat as bright red color so they look fresh. Unfortunately, sodium nitrate also results in the formation of cancer-causing substances in the human body. And this leads to a sharp increase in cancer risk for those who eat them. So here we have sodium nitrate and in processed meats and foods such as sausage, hot dogs, sandwich meat, frozen pizza with meat, canned soups with meat, frozen meals with meat, ravioli and meat pasta foods, sandwich meat used in popular restaurants. Nearly all red meat sold at public schools, restaurants, hospitals, hotels, and theme parks. So we must read the ingredients. Don't buy anything made with sodium nitrate or monosodium glutamate. Don't eat red meats served by restaurants, schools, hospitals, hotels, or other institutions. We want to eat fresh produce at every meal. We know that, and we want to avoid allowing man-made sodium nitrate into one of my cells. Now, as I educated you about the cell, we talked about toxification, we talked about digestion, we talked about our immune function. That immune function is directly tied into these man-made compounds that are foreign to our food supply. Man has introduced these foods into our food supply. This is a cancer-causing agent. How does cancer form? Cancer forms at a cellular level. That means one cell mutating at a time. One cell, guys, out of the trillions and trillions of cells that you have, one cell mutating because of replicating DNA in an abnormal fashion due to things such as a man-made substance like monosodium glutamate or sodium nitrate. So today I wanted to combine a topic like this study that I just read to you, along with a foundation, which we're starting today, which is structural integrity. And I want you to please, if you have not become a member of my blog, drproodian.com, Proodian.com, please become a member. I'm going to be blogging very soon in the next couple of weeks about a personal hero of mine, a real genius. I'm not going to give it away as to who he is, but someone who has done some tremendous research in this field. Guys, thank you very much for listening to the By Design radio program with me, Dr. James Proodian. If you'd like more information on me or Proodian Healthcare, please go to ProodianHealthcare.com. Submit any questions you might have for the show, and please become a blog member. God bless you and your families this week. And once again, happy birthday to Sophia and happy 8th grade graduation to my daughter Hannah. God, I love you. God bless.
You've been listening to By Design with Dr. James Proodian of Proodian Healthcare. To learn more, visit us at tandemradio.com, that's tandemradio.com, or on Facebook. And don't forget to email us with your questions. We'd love to hear from you. In the meantime, hope you have a healthy week, and we look forward to you joining us next time for more fantastic insights from Dr. James Proodian on By Design, a special production of Tandem Radio.